Hello everyone, welcome to this series on the history of English literature. And in this video, we are going to discuss reaction against the Georgians in the modern age. Introduction. The turn of the 20th century marked a period of intense transformation in English and Irish literature, often referred to as the modern age. This era was characterized by a significant shift in poetic styles and philosophies, driven by a desire to break away from established norms and embrace new forms of expression. One of the most pivotal movements emerging from this period was Imagism, a reaction against the ideals of Georgian poetry. Imagism sought to revolutionize poetry by emphasizing clarity, precision, and the use of vivid sensory images. This video explores the genesis of Imagism, its foundational principles as articulated by T.E. Hume, the contributions of the key figures such as Hilda Doolittle and Ezra Pound, the movement's publications, its eventual decline, and its enduring legacy in modern poetry. T.E. Hume, the theatrical pioneer. T.E. Hume, 1883 to 1917, was a central figure in the development of Imagism, despite his relatively small body of poetic work. Hume's influence stemmed primarily from his theoretical lectures, which challenged the prevailing Georgian ideals. He criticized the facility and looseness of texture in Georgian poetry, arguing that poetry should focus on the world as perceived through the senses. Hume advocated for the presentation of themes through a succession of concise, clearly visualized and concrete images. He emphasized the importance of accuracy in detail and precision in significance, laying the foundation for a more objective and restrained poetic style. Hume also championed the use of verse libre or free verse, advocating for rhythms that mirrored everyday speech rather than adhering to conventional verse patterns. His insistence on clarity, brevity, and the visual impact of imagery resonated with young poets seeking to break free from traditional constraints. Although Hume wrote only 5 short poems himself, his theoretical contributions had a profound and lasting impact on English poetry. The emergence of Imagism. Building on Hume's principles, American poets Hilda Doolittle and Ezra Pound became the torchbearers of the Imagist movement. They adopted Hume's emphasis on sensory perception and visual precision, coining the term Imagism to describe their new approach. Imagism sought to strip away the ornate language and sentimentalism of Georgian poetry, focusing instead on clear, sharp, and direct images that conveyed emotion and meaning without unnecessary embellishment. Hilda Doolittle. Doolittle, an American poet, was instrumental in defining the aesthetic and thematic direction of Imagism. Her poetry often explored themes of nature, mythology, and personal experience, rendered through precise and evocative imagery. Her work exemplified the Imagist ideal of creating vivid pictures with minimal words, achieving emotional depth through concentrated expression. Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound, another key figure in Imagism, played a crucial role in formalizing and promoting the movement. His poem, In a Station of the Metro, is a quintessential example of Imagist poetry, using just 2 lines to create a striking visual image. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough. Pound's contributions extended beyond his own poetry. He was instrumental in editing and publishing Imagist works, providing a platform for like-minded poets to share their innovative approaches. Publications and key works. Imagism gained traction through a series of influential publications that showcased the movement's distinctive style and philosophy. The Egoist, 1914. Founded by Ezra Pound in 1914, The Egoist served as the primary organ for Imagist poetry. The magazine provided a venue for Imagist poets to publish their work, fostering a community of writers dedicated to the movement's principles. Through The Egoist, Pound and his contemporaries disseminated the ideals of Imagism, encouraging poets to embrace clarity, precision, and the power of visual imagery. Des Images, 1914. In the same year, Pound edited Des Images, an anthology of poetry by followers of the Imagist school. This collection highlighted the diverse voices within the movement, showcasing poems that adhered to the principles of concise imagery and free verse. Des Images played a pivotal role in defining Imagism as a distinct poetic movement, setting clear boundaries between it and the preceding Georgian tradition. Some Imagist poets, 1915 to 17. Subsequent anthologies, such as Some Imagist Poets, 1915 to 17, continued to compile and promote Imagist works. These collections further solidified the movement's identity, presenting a cohesive body of poetry that exemplified the Imagist ethos. By curating these anthologies, Pound and his associates ensured that Imagism would have a lasting presence in the literary landscape. Criticisms and decline of Imagism. Despite its initial success and influence, Imagism faced significant criticism and ultimately saw a decline in popularity. The movement's emphasis on brevity and visual precision often led to obscurity and perceived artistic license, as some critics argued that the focus on imagery sacrificed depth and narrative coherence. Additionally, the strict adherence to free verse and the avoidance of traditional poetic forms alienated some audiences who preferred the familiarity of established verse structures. These factors contributed to the rapid decline of Imagism as a dominant poetic movement. However, the core principles of Imagism, clarity, precision, and the power of visual imagery continued to influence subsequent literary developments, even as the movement itself faded from prominence. Legacy of Imagism. Despite its relatively short lifespan, Imagism left an indelible mark on modern poetry. T. E. Hume's foundational ideas about sensory perception and visual imagery became integral to the movement's philosophy, shaping the works of poets like Hilda Doolittle and Ezra Pound. Moreover, Imagism's emphasis on art for art's sake and the pursuit of aesthetic beauty resonated with later literary movements, most notably modernism. Influence on T.S. Eliot and 1930s poets. Imagism's legacy is particularly evident in the work of T.S. Eliot and the poets of the 1930s. Eliot's poetry, with its fragmented structures and rich imagery, reflects the Imagist influence on concise and precise language. Similarly, poets of the 1930s embraced the use of clear and vivid images to convey complex emotions and ideas, building on it the foundations laid by Imagism. Richard Aldington. Richard Aldington, a prominent English member of the Imagist school, further exemplified the movement's principles through his poetry. Aldington's work combined the aesthetic focus of Imagism with a broader engagement with social and political themes, bridging the gap between poetic beauty and substantive content. Conclusion. Imagism represented a critical reaction against the established ideas of Georgian poetry, advocating for a more disciplined and visually precise approach to poetic expression. Spearheaded by T. E. Hume and brought to fruition by poets like Hilda Doolittle and Ezra Pound, Imagism sought to prioritize clarity, precision, and the power of sensory imagery. Despite facing criticisms and experiencing a decline in popularity, Imagism's principles profoundly influenced the trajectory of modern poetry, paving the way for movements like modernism. The legacy of Imagism is evident in the enduring emphasis on visual imagery and aesthetic beauty in contemporary poetry, underscoring the movement's significant contribution to the evolution of literary expression in the modern age. So this was the discussion on the reaction against Georgians in the modern age. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other topic. Until then, goodbye and thank you.